The Warforged were created with a singular purpose, but now that that war is over, these magical golems need to find a new destiny. Who are the Warforged? How did they come about? Who created them?
So the Warforged takes this idea that golems are a form of magic that have always existed in D&D, and Eberron is about using magic, the sort of way we use technology for entertainment, for travel, for communication, and for war. And during the last war, 30 years before sort of the start of things, House Cannith, which is one of the dragon-marked houses, they have the Mark of Making, so they are sort of the main house of artificers and wizards, created a race of sentient humanoid golems that they could mass produce. And so the Warforged are essentially golems that were created to be soldiers in the last war. And they sort of came out, they were created with skills, essentially sort of elite level skills. You know, the skills, again, of a first level player character, which is pretty good in Eberron terms. But they're made of metal, stone, and leather. You know, they're tireless, and again, made to be soldiers or whatever your function is. So as one of the Warforged, one of the first things you think about, and this is the stuff we talk about in the Wayfinder's Guide, is what was your purpose? What were you made for? Were you a scout? In which case, you know, one of the sub-races, the skirmisher, is very fast and, you know, and quick. Were you just a straight up frontline soldier? Or we also have what we call the envoy, which is Warforged designed with a very specific purpose. You know, were you made essentially as a rogue, and you've got lockpicks built into your fingers? You know, if you're a Warforged sorcerer, are you essentially like a living wand? You know, were you created to channel magical energy? So one of the things about the Warforged is just that idea that your character was literally created to do whatever it is you're doing. You didn't decide to do it. This was what you were built for. And one question is, are you going to stay with that? Is that what you want to do? Because the Warforged were all built for the war, but at the end of the last war, which was 2 years ago, they were all given freedom and rights as citizens. And the main question is, as a creature literally built as a weapon, what do you do with that? What is your purpose in the world? Do you just, again, become an adventurer, look for another war to fight? Or do you try and find some greater meaning, find some greater purpose? And that, again, is just one of the background stories of the world. If you have about 10,000 Warforged out in the world trying to figure out where they belong. There's also a side sort of element to it of that same treaty that freed them also enforced that no new Warforged could be created. And so you're also part of a race that technically has no future. And what does that mean for you? So to me, the thing about the Warforged is there are just a lot of interesting things to explore in terms of finding your own identity, finding your purpose in the world, as well as just considering that, what does it mean if I'm a cleric? Was I built to be a cleric? Or again, have I found faith, even though I am a creature that was created? You know, I know who created me, that guy in that shop over there. How do I find faith in that form? And these are the kind of things I really enjoy about them.
And is that limitation of they're not making any new Warforged, is that a potential major plot threat?
Oh, definitely. And this is the thing, is with the Warforged, you know, some of them are just trying to fit in. You have some that are basically very angry and essentially, we were made to die in your war. And there's a villain called the Lord of Blades. I say villain, but you know, to a lot of Warforged, you know, he's basically trying to carve out a new homeland in the Mournland, and you know, sort of striking out against Cannith and the other, you know, other nations. In part because, again, they want to be in control of their future. You know, there's a certain argument that they've just been sort of brushed away under the rug, and that you have a lot of places where Warforged are being used as sort of cheap labor and such, because for the most part they don't, you know, actually understand sort of what they could be doing. So there's a lot of room there as a player to decide, are you just looking out for yourself, or are you interested in what happens to the Warforged as a species?
Plus, you also stick out in the world.
Well, and not only do you stick out in the world, the big thing as a Warforged is you literally were built to be a weapon. And so you have the combination of a lot of people don't want to be reminded of the war. The war's over. We don't want to be thinking about that. And you are basically a tank walking around through downtown. So a lot of people are going to be uneasy about that. And that depending what kind of Warforged you are, the sort of frontline soldier models, they're heavily armored, you've got a strong unarmed attack, there's nothing you can do about it. You are dangerous. And that's something that will make people uneasy. Some people say that they're, they're magic robots. I'm like, well, they're not really robots because they weren't programmed. They were sort of created, and even Canis doesn't quite understand. One of the big questions that is an open question is, do Warforged have souls? And essentially, a Warforged can be resurrected, which is technically sort of a cheat proof for those of us through game mechanics that they have something that serves as a soul. But within the world, do people believe that? Or, and what does that mean? But, to me these are concepts that are science fiction commonly explored in science fiction because that's where you can create a new race very easily. But again, it's just as relevant whether that's a golem or a bound elemental or things like that than if it is a robot or an AI. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Philip K. Dick and Blade Runner and all those sorts of stories. And to me, it just is that interesting, that core thing of I was built as a weapon in a war and now there's no war. What does that make me? Is an interesting thing to explore. You can just totally say, I'm playing a Warforged fighter and I just want to hit things and that's fun. Or you can get very deep into, I need to find a way to ensure my species can survive, to help Warforged who are being forced into indentured servitude or things like that. These are all stories you could follow. And looking to the Lord of Blades, do you see the Lord of Blades as a villain, or do you see him as someone, again, fighting for his people?
Thank you again, Keith Baker, for talking about the world of Eberron. You can purchase the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron on dndbeyond.com by clicking on the link in this video description. I'm Todd Kenrick, your host. Thank you for watching.